impact people and communities across BC. There are currently 311 active wildfires burning in our province. Since April 1st, 2023, 904 wildfires have burned a total of 1.15 million hectares. Over the weekend, significant amounts of dry lightning impacted nearly all regions of the province, starting 115 additional wildfires. In the last 3 days, there have been more than 23,000 lightning strikes in total. This lightning activity was compounded by ongoing drought conditions and high temperatures. We are anticipating continued extreme fire behavior, and all of us need to do our part to prevent the situation from becoming any worse, no matter where we are in the province. Several evacuation orders and alerts came into effect over the weekend, primarily impacting communities in the Northeast, Prince George, and Caribou fire centres. Approximately 156 people are under an evacuation order due to wildfires, and approximately 629 people are under an evacuation alert. Yesterday, a tactical evacuation was undertaken in the Stikine region to help people evacuate quickly and safely due to the Little Blue River wildfire. The Stikine region is unincorporated. In fact, it is the only region in our province that is unincorporated. Therefore, the province is responsible for implementing the evacuation order. In order to bring in the order, the province has had to declare a state of emergency for the region. Earlier today, I declared a state of emergency for the Stikine region effective immediately. While the state of emergency is regional, we are continuously assessing the situation across the province closely. We will not hesitate to take action to keep people and communities safe, and will provide updates as the situation evolves. While a provincial state of emergency will not provide us with more resources to fight the fires, as those powers already exist within the Wildfire Act, it may support our provincial emergency response and would allow us to use additional tools under the Emergency Program Act. This includes issuing evacuation orders, as we have done today. This can also include securing supply chains and the flow of emergency supplies. To date, this season, we have not needed these powers province-wide, but we will continue to ensure that we have all of the tools available at our disposal to support people and communities. We want to recognize the BC Wildfire Service and emergency management teams who are working around the clock to suppress fires, support communities, and share up-to-date information with the public. Our dedicated wildfire service and emergency management personnel are working tirelessly to ensure your safety and well-being. Under the Wildfire Act, the province has access to all the tools needed to coordinate provincial and international resources to suppress wildfires. International personnel from Mexico and the United States are currently deployed to the Prince George Fire Centre, and the province has contracted additional aviation resources in recent days. BC continues to coordinate additional out-of-province resources through the Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Centre, but everyone has a part to play in preparedness. Fire smart your home, clean your gutter, mow your lawn, and make sure anything combustible such as wood piles are stored at least 10 meters away from your house. There are many great tips in the Fire Smart Homeowner's Guide available through the Fire Smart BC website. It is also important that people are aware of and follow fire bans and prohibitions in their area. Today, we are also announcing additional campfire restrictions. Effective today at 3:00 p.m., Category 1 campfires will be prohibited in all areas of the province, with the exception of Haida Gwaii. I'll say that again. Effective today at 3:00 p.m., Category 1 campfires will be prohibited in all areas of the province, with the exception of Haida Gwaii. I urge everyone to do their part. Human-caused wildfires are completely preventable and divert critical resources away from lightning-caused fires. You can learn more about fire bans on the BC Wildfire Service app or website. You can also report a wildfire using the app or calling *5555 from a cell phone. Quick reporting by people has already been a big help to wildfire crews this season. Give me a second. Thank you. If your community is placed under an evacuation order, you must evacuate the area immediately. Your local government or First Nation will provide information on evacuation routes and evacuation reception centers. Emergency support services is readily available to lend a helping hand to those who have been evacuated and who need assistance. People must register and attend an evacuation reception center to access these services, which encompass everything from providing accommodation, food, and transportation to taking care of other essential needs that you may have. It is now possible for people to pre-register with emergency support services online using the evacuee registration and assistance tool. You can do that from anywhere in the province. Please visit ess.gov.bc.ca to register. Whether you live near an active wildfire or not, I encourage every British Columbian to take 20 minutes out of your day to put together an emergency plan, including packing a grab-and-go bag. By keeping a grab-and-go bag in your home and vehicle stocked with plenty of water, you're giving yourself another layer of preparedness in case there is an unexpected event. PreparedBC.ca has excellent resources available in multiple languages to get you started. In addition to wildfires, many areas of our province are already being affected by drought. Drought can impact people and communities in different ways, including agriculture, health, economic, and environmental consequences. With the implementation of the BC Drought and Water Scarcity Response Plan, area-specific drought response plans are being developed with Indigenous nations, local authority, water licensees, and stakeholders. The province has been working with communities on their water scarcity response planning and is ready to support other planning efforts throughout the drought season. We all have a part to play in building a more resilient province. And at this time, I am urging people across the province to conserve water. Consider taking shorter showers. Only do full loads of dishes and laundry. Water your lawn sparingly. We are in this together. Do your part. Look out for one another. To wrap up, I want to acknowledge that we are seeing more climate events, major fires, and droughts. This is an extremely challenging time for people and communities. It is immensely stressful. It is immensely stressful living day to day with smoke or being near a fire or being on an evacuation alert or order. Knowing there may be increasingly tight water restrictions to ensure there is enough water for essential purposes is also extremely difficult. So thank you to all members of the public who are helping, whether it is by calling in a fire at star 5555, having an emergency bag ready to go, or having a plan to support family or neighbors who may need assistance in an emergency situation. And on behalf of all British Columbians, thank you to the firefighters, first responders, local and provincial emergency management teams who are working tirelessly to prepare and respond to these challenges. I want to assure British Columbians we are working hard to I want to assure British Columbians that we are working hard to ensure communities are prepared and have the supports that they need in the event of an emergency, like a wildfire or other climate-related disaster. Our number one focus is keeping people safe, and we urge individuals and families to take the necessary steps to prepare. By taking steps to be prepared and knowing where to find information, we can all gain a sense of control, a sense of safety, and a sense of peace. Let's continue to enjoy the summer, but let's also do so safely by being prepared, by being calm and alert. Thank you. I'm now joined by Cliff Chapman, Director of Provincial Operations for the BC Wildfire Service, and Peter Brock, Executive Director of Regional Operations for the Ministry of Emergency Management and Climate Readiness. We're here to take your questions now.
As a reminder, for media on the phone, please press star 1 to enter the queue. That's star 1 to ask a question. For media in the room, please line up at the microphone provided, and please make sure to provide your full name and outlet. Media will be limited to one question and one follow-up. We will be starting in the room today. Our first question is from St. John Alexander, CTV.
Thank you so much, Minister. Thank you. It struck me here, and just to be clear, a lot of people may not know what the camp zone 1 or condition 1 for the camp, the fire rules. If you could explain that. And also the water. We haven't heard this before, conserve the water. So is there concern in the province that we're running low?
There are fire bans across the province, different categories of bans ranging from campfires, which are very small fires, usually around the size of 0.5 meter by 0.5 meter by 0.5 meter, up to full burns, which have been they've been restricted in the province for several weeks now. I'll make sure that we go on to Cliff Chapman, who can provide a more detailed response on that. On drought, what I will say on drought is that we have been in drought conditions. We have seen the potential of extreme drought conditions in the province since last winter. Earlier on in the season, when we provided our seasonal preparedness briefings, we indicated that when the ground froze last winter, we were already in drought conditions, which meant that additional precipitation was not being absorbed by the water. It is part of the reason why we had such an early start to the wildfire season. For a while, our primary concern around the drought conditions was its impact on wildfire. But we see now that the situation is growing more extreme. Many communities are implementing water restrictions, and we're reaching out to communities to begin discussing more measures. The primary areas of concern at this time are the Northeast, as well as the Lower Mainland and the island. I'll pass it on to Cliff.
Thank you, Minister Ma. As Minister for BC Wildfire Service, and I'm honored to be here today joining from Kamloops, the traditional territory of the Tecumloops to Secwepemc. I'll go into a little bit more detail on the Category 1 prohibitions that Minister Ma referenced that are going in province-wide today, excluding Haida Gwaii. Before I do that, I did just want to take a quick opportunity to reiterate the thank yous that Minister Ma issued. Thank you to the BC Wildfire Service staff, our contractors, private industry, the forest industry, First Nation communities, local governments. This really is a full provincial effort as we experience, very similar fire starts as we had in 2017 and 2018. And it really is an all hands on deck within any of these regional fire centers where we have significant fire on the landscape. So I just want to thank everybody for working with us as we come into your communities and try to work together to protect the people of those communities and the communities themselves. So thank you very much. In terms of the question around Category 1, so just for clarity, we have had Category 2 and 3 prohibitions on for the better part of the last few weeks, with a couple of exceptions. And we had a Category 1, which is a campfire prohibition, 0.5 meter by 0.5 meter fire, has been on the majority of the province for the last couple of weeks as well. The step we're taking today is to restrict that activity across the province, excluding Haida Gwaii. And I just want to reiterate that we have not had a concern, a large concern with human-caused campfires creating wildfires. But as Minister mentioned, we do not have the capacity right now to respond to fires that we can prevent. And those are the human-caused fires. We have seen a significant lightning event go through this province for the last 3 days, and we will see more lightning today, tomorrow, and potentially the next day, widespread across the province with potentially little to no rain. So at this point in time, we're really trying to use the measures within our control to prohibit human-caused fires, and that starts really with this total prohibition on all categories of fires. And I encourage everyone to go to our website, bcwildfire.ca, where you can find detailed information on each of the 4 categories, as well as why we would prohibit them.
Injun, did you have a follow-up?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Cliff, you were talking about fatigue and the crews. I'm wondering how they're doing, whether you have enough personnel, do you need more? And of course, you had the evacuations this weekend, I think you said. How did they go?
Thank you for the question. I'll let Peter respond to the evacuation question, but I will, and I really appreciate the question about our staff well-being and fatigue. One thing I want to highlight, and I highlighted it last week on the media availability, is BC wildfire and fires in BC have really been going since the middle of April. predominantly focused in the northeast of the province in our Prince George Fire Center. But we are a provincial agency, so our staff have been deploying to Prince George, Fort St. John, Fort Nelson for the last 2 months. So they are all turning into what we would say is their fourth and fifth tours of duty, with obviously rest days in between. Our staff continue to show up. They continue to be passionate and do everything within their power to try to support these communities and support fires on the landscape. But I won't lie, like it's a difficult job. We work long hours, 14 to 16 hours. We run night shifts, which are also 12 to 14 hours long. And we have, over 1,700 people engaged in the province that are working these shifts, and it is fatiguing. It's something that we're very conscious of within BC Wildfire Service. And again, it's why we appreciate so much the support from local governments and local First Nation communities, really welcoming us in as our staff do everything in their power to try to protect those same communities. So I want to thank everybody for being so welcoming to our organization and all the contractors that work with us. But fatigue is something that we're going to have to continue to monitor, and it's another reason why we continue to ask for support from other agencies across Canada and across the world. And so as we continue to see activity increase, we have fires on the landscape that we require resources on. We have put in a request to CIFC for a significant resource uplift. Right now, we do not have confirmation on whether that is coming, but it's quite significant. And as mentioned by Minister Ma, we have been able to procure some additional aviation aircraft in the form of a Sky Crane, which is a heavy lift helicopter, as well as a couple of tankers, land-based retardant aircraft, as well as skimming aircraft. So that's where we're at today. Thank you.
St. John, can you repeat the portion about evacuation?
Oh, yeah, if you could, please. How is the evacuation going? And there was one this weekend. Were people listening? Did it go well? I know it was in a remote area.
We had several evacuations that go over the weekend, but I'll let Peter speak. Evacuations that go over the weekend, but I'll let Peter speak to it in more detail.
Yes, Peter Brown, MCR. So we have had a number of evacuations throughout the weekend and over the last week, of course. For the latest information on the evacuation orders currently at play, you can go to Emergency Info BC, our EMCR website for that list. I would say overall, residents are aware of the hazard. They are listening to their local authority as they should. And so far, we are getting positive responses on the evacuations. I think it's just worth mentioning that the grab and go bag that was mentioned by Minister Ma is where we want to place our emphasis. Continually remind people that they need to be personally prepared. They need to be ready for an evacuation alert. It means get ready for having to leave immediately, and if on order, do so immediately. So I would say that overall, we have great working relationships with both First Nations and local authorities in the province of BC when it comes to evacuations, and we want to just ensure that the public remains aware and continues to monitor the situation because it can evolve very quickly. Thank you.
For our next question, we're going to the phones. Mira Baines, CBC. Question, we're going to the phones. Mira Baines, CBC. Mira, are you there? All right, we're going to...
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. So my question is for the minister. Just in terms of highways, we've noticed that some highways were intermittently shut down and then opened up again. What can we expect in some of the areas, especially in Northeast BC, regarding some of the highway closures up there?
This might actually be a question for Cliff Chapman. Cliff, maybe you can speak to some of the more specific conditions that you're seeing up in the area and what highways might be impacted.
It's an excellent question, and it's something that we've seen with the Cameron Bluffs fire and the highway closure on the island, and obviously in the last number of days we've seen some closures, intermittent closures of highways, the Alaskan Highway, as well as some highways in Fort St. James, Burns Lake, that area of the province. It is our goal to try to, at minimum, allow intermittent traffic. We work very closely with our partners in Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure to do everything we can to get those highways open and keep them open. Obviously, safety is our priority, and so we will continue to see intermittent highway closures as best we can. The Highway 27 corridor, which was closed intermittently over the last couple of days, is currently open. And that's something really we use our fire behavior specialists and our predictive services unit to really forecast where those fires potentially may impact a highway and what those impacts will be, and then plan our operations accordingly, trying to stop the closure of those highways, obviously. But when we can't, we work with MOTI to make sure that we can safely allow traffic through when it's appropriate to do so. So I do suspect we'll see more impacts over the course of the next few days to highways, and it will be our goal to continue to keep those transportation corridors open.
Mira, did you have a follow-up?
Yes, I do. This is about the Bulkley-Nechako Regional District. They've been begging for help, and I understand just from what you've said earlier that there's more resources. They're trying to procure more resources. Is the province at a point where you just really can't get to all the fires that are going right now? And would there be an effort to maybe mobilize some firefighters in different regions to go to areas like the Bulkley-Nechako?
I'll let Cliff fill in on this because I know that he's got a lot of information. I keep looking at the monitor down there. I was told not to. There is a lot of information. There is a lot of information that Cliff will be able to provide. What I will say is that we treat our resources across the province as provincial resources. They are absolutely deployed from other areas of the province, and fires are prioritized accordingly. Cliff, I know that you have a lot more to add with that.
Thank you, Minister Ma. Yes, very candid, but I think Minister framed it really well in the sense that we are a provincial organization, and our resources, while they have home bases all across the province and in many communities across the province, we have been activating them to travel to the north for the last 2 months, and we continue to do so. The key for the provincial safety and ensuring that we don't have another fire that gets large and is quite impactful to the province is we have to continue to keep some resources within each of the centers for what we call preparedness, in particular because we know lightning is coming. I did reference earlier in an answer that we have put in a significant order to the Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Center somewhere, and we'll get the accurate number out once we get confirmation, but we have asked for somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 additional resources. We're also working with our partners in Montana, California, through the Northwest Compact to try to secure additional resources, not just for the next 5 days, but really looking at it through the lens of the next 2 months, 2.5 months, July, August, and September, which ties into the fatigue and the question around how our staff are doing. We need to make sure that we continue to see resources coming into the province, resetting our own resources to actively go and respond to wildfires. So we have mobilized resources up to the north over the weekend. We continued to push resources from the southern centers up to the northern centers, in particular into that regional district of Bulkley-Nechako area, which has got a significant amount of fires on the landscape. Some adjacent to communities or in the vicinity of communities. So we have attempted to mobilize and prioritize resources heading to that area. And today we're working really closely with some of the industry partners in that regional district of Bulkley-Nechako to see whether they have additional resource capacity to support our effort in the form of heavy equipment and some of the camp infrastructure that they have in place in that area right now. So we're continuing to ask and continuing to see some support from our national and international partners. But we are looking at fires with a really close lens around what are the potential impacts of those fires. But we will respond to every fire one way or another. It's really when the fires, if they can escape our initial response when we get report of a fire, which generally is coming from the public right now. We'd like to thank the public for that. We will send a response. It's really once the fires, if they escape our initial response, when we start to see that critical resource shortage. Thank you.
Our next question is from Ali Herrera. Check. Please go ahead.
Hi there. I just wanted to get a question on the. Hi there. I just wanted to get a question on the on the international and provincial help. You know, the last couple of months we've had people from firefighters from other countries, and even here on the island today, Lady Smith is sending some of their personnel to help out in the Prince George Fire Center. So my question is, perhaps since May or even April, do we have a number on the number of provincial or from other provinces, from other countries, the number of firefighters, the number of countries and provinces that have come to help out with the wildfire efforts?
Well, let me begin by saying how grateful we are for all of the resources that we've been receiving from other provinces and our international partners. We really do rely on those partnerships very much, and we're very happy when we're also able to support our international partners in turn as well. I know that Cliff likely has some numbers for you. Cliff?
Thank you, Minister, and the numbers from April. What I can tell you right now is we have 160 firefighters and overhead staff from Mexico and the United States. We have some confirmation on an additional 100 staff coming from Mexico, but that's not until July 17th. And we're hopeful that this resource order that we've put into the Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Center will be filled sooner than July 17th, when we're expected to see additional resources from Mexico. I do want to add, we're seeing really a global response to what's happening across Canada this year. We're activating countries that have really never supported Canadian fires in the past, and I think that's allowing us a little bit more ability to secure resources. There's 100 Korean firefighters in Quebec right now, and that's the first time that we've had Korean firefighters in Canada. We've also got firefighters in the eastern provinces from the Dominican Republic, from France, and we are also in on those resources with SIFC. So there is still some capacity out there nationally, well, internationally. Nationally, there's very little, as we have many of our agencies across Canada are in an extreme hazard and are dealing with significant fire on the landscape. And that's really allowed, or I guess forced us to push those relationships and sign agreements with some countries that historically we haven't brought into Canada to support our firefighting effort. So again, currently 160 from out of province, not including aviation assets, and likely to see that number rise, ideally significantly over the coming days and weeks. Thank you.
Ollie, did you have a follow-up? Ollie, did you have a follow-up?
Yes, and this is probably for the Minister. You mentioned earlier how you activated a state of emergency for the Bikini region, but I was a little bit confused. It doesn't give as much power as one would normally think with the state of emergency. Could you clarify exactly what that means for the entire province now that you have the state of emergency unincorporated?
So the state of emergency that I've declared is only for the Stikine region. Because the Stikine region is unincorporated, it means that it does not have a local government authority to issue local states of emergency and evacuation orders. In every other part of the province, a local government, a municipality, a regional district, or a First Nation can issue a state of emergency and put into place evacuation orders. However, in the unincorporated areas of the Stikine, that authority is the province. So in effect, we are acting as the local government in that area. At this time, that state of emergency is only for the Stikine region.
Our next question is from Wolf Defner, Black Press. Please go ahead.
Thank you, but to the issue of drought, earlier Minister Ma said that a number of communities have already imposed restrictions on water use. What's the possibility of getting a complete list of those communities at this stage?
We can certainly follow up with you on that. I will say that many communities will have their usual seasonal water restrictions, but my ministry has been working with many communities that we anticipate will experience more acute cases of drought. They've already been in those conversations, and we'll be reaching out to more communities about imposing more water restrictions in the weeks ahead. So we'll follow up with you on that.
Okay.
Wolf, did you have a follow-up?
Yes, I do. Sort of looking at the bigger picture here, how much of a turning point did this last weekend represent when it comes to the wildfire season. We already heard a very significant number of lightning strikes, and of course we just heard about the incoming ban on Category 1 campfires. What sort of a turning point this weekend mark in the overall trajectory of the wildfires?
Things have certainly escalated very drastically in a large part of the province over the weekend. And I would also say that it is, in addition to the it is the drought situation in addition to the wildfire situation that is really causing concern and causing us to pay a very, very close attention and assess the situation across the province. As I noted, many communities are implementing water restrictions already. We anticipate the need to escalate those water restrictions in larger areas of the province. And just for context, the drought situation is serious. We have not experienced this level of widespread drought across the province this early in the year in recent memory. We are seeing that 17 of the 34 water basins that make up the province are already at level 4 drought conditions, level 5 being the highest. And what's also the case with drought is that the impacts will often not be felt for some time after we see them. So it could be weeks before communities really feel them on the ground. And that's why we're signaling today that the situation is serious. And the calls for individuals to not only abide by local community restrictions, but also engage in their own water scarcity, water reduction practices is absolutely necessary. We need people to pay attention now. Later on in this week, we will be providing a technical briefing, more detailed briefing on the drought conditions ahead. Oh, and sorry, perhaps, I don't know if Cliff, you wanted to add more on the wildfire front and what happened over this weekend.
Thanks, Minister. I'll just add a little bit of context. I think often we get asked again, while I wouldn't compare them like for like because the fires are happening in different locations, what I can share is that in 2017, which will be remembered in BC as one of our more devastating fire seasons of recent memory, we had 190 new starts July 6th to 8th. And those starts really drove the next 2.5 months in terms of some of those fires really getting quite large and quite impactful. And it created quite a resource demand in BC for really the rest of the summer. As you heard Minister Ma in the opening say, we had from July 7th to 9th this year, we had 244 starts, confirmed fire starts. And so relatively speaking, that's similar. And we are seeing, obviously we're requesting resources, which we have been for the better part of the last 6 weeks as well, in anticipation of this event. I think it's worth noting we knew the potential for lightning this weekend. We knew that it was coming. We prepared as best we could and accordingly across the province. We moved resources around. We secured extra aircraft. So we knew this event was coming, and obviously the impacts of it are being felt really across the province. Somewhat centered in the north of the province right now, but we're seeing, as we speak right now, we're seeing lightning tracking through different parts of the province early on in the afternoon. We're likely to see more this afternoon, more widespread, and again tomorrow. So in terms of your question of this being a turning point for the season, I think all indications are that we will be fighting these fires as well as additional starts we may pick up in the next few days and obviously the next few weeks for the remainder of the summer. And obviously we'll see, and we're hopeful that Mother Nature cooperates, but we're not relying on that at this point. We're really relying on trying to get enough resources to suppress what we have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next question is for Graham Wood, Glacier Media. Please go ahead.
Hi there. This may be for Cliff. Cliff, you mentioned that you're not having there's not really a large concern with human-caused wildfires at campsites. So with the knowledge that Washington State, many of the parks you can have a campfire in a pit. Whereas here we've got a blanket ban that's going to be enacted like most years. And so I'm just curious about how many wildfires are emanating from BC parks, such as Golden Ears, because why are we enacting a blanket ban on these sorts of campfires while Washington State you can have firing a pit in most of these parks?
Thanks for the question, and I wasn't aware of Washington State, so I appreciate that. And we fires after the call. I don't have that in front of me right now, but I think what I would stress, and I think Minister Ma stressed it as well, is that we are in a position in this province that we cannot afford to have a preventable fire occur in this province. We are asking for help from the globe, essentially, international partnerships, to come and support our response effort right now. If we have just one campfire that gets away and starts a very impactful fire, that's going to draw resources away from wherever they currently are. And so I understand the concern, and I understand what Washington is doing, or why you bring Washington up as an example. I think we're in a very challenging situation as we sit here today with what's going on in BC, what's going to be happening over the next 3 days with, as I said, more lightning starts, highly anticipated in every fire center across the province. We cannot afford to have a human-caused fire. So I appreciate the question. I understand the concern. At this point in time, I can just stress that we cannot afford a human-caused fire in BC.
Graham, did you have a follow-up?
Sure. I guess I would follow up with the Minister of Bowinn. Bowinn, what we're hearing is, are there enough resources in BC? And so it sounds like there's not in BC. And so it sounds like there's not. Is this just a matter of the province just being so large that we don't have the resources to do this? It would just cost too much that we have to inevitably do these blanket bans. Whereas in Washington State, it seems as though they have more resources. So where do you stand? Are you calling on your government to put more resources into this sector?
I think what's clear to me is that the climate crisis is here. It is here today. It is no longer something that we can afford to talk about as though it is something that is far off in the future for our children and our grandchildren to deal with. We are seeing more extreme weather events, hotter temperatures, drier conditions. We're seeing it result in more wildfires closer together across the province. We're seeing flooding. We're seeing it in extreme heat, extreme cold. We're seeing it in avalanche conditions. We're seeing it in extreme ice conditions in the winter. The climate crisis is here. And in a lot of ways, what we are dealing with today and going on into the future will be on the leading edge of unprecedented situations that we will have to face. That is why we, as a government, have been taking the steps that we have been taking. In the months leading up to it, now we've created a new Ministry of Emergency Management and Climate Readiness, the first standalone emergency management ministry in BC's province. We have adapted the wildfire service to become a year-round wildfire service and made the largest investment in BC wildfire service in the province's history. We continue to reach out to partners for help, and we're doing what we can to manage the situation in a very challenging climate for this province. That being said, the situation absolutely is serious, and we must and we will continue to do more to keep people safe.
We have time for one more question. Our final question today goes to Albert C. Fairchild.
Hi, Minister. Has the ministry depleted the budget assigned to this initiative combating wildfire? And
I think the question was about whether we have the budget to be able to respond to the situation at hand. So the Wildfire Act itself is a very powerful act that does enable us to draw on the resources that we need to fight wildfires. That means that we can acquire the resources we need, we can spend what we need, we can call on international resources. All of that is available to us through statutory spending through the Wildfire Act. So we're able to spend the money that we need.
The second question is...
Still there, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, and second question is, how safe is it to road trip during summertime across the province as we see so many wildfires happening around?
I think it speaks to the importance of being aware of the situation wherever it is that people might be traveling across the province. There are significant wildfire concerns in the north, and it started in the northeast. It is starting to creep down towards the south. If someone is traveling the province, absolutely take the time to be aware of where the wildfires are. You can find out where all the wildfires are in the province by visiting the BC Wildfire Service website. It is also available on mobile app. It's summer is an important time for people and families and businesses. We want people to be able to enjoy themselves, but we also need people to be alert and be prepared for potential situations that they may be coming across. That means making sure that you have an emergency grab-and-go bag in your home and in your car. It means pre-registering for emergency support services wherever you may live, and it means looking ahead before you head out on a road trip. Check Drive BC for road conditions, check the Wildfire Service app for wildfires in the area, and stay alert.
That's all the questions we have for today. That concludes today's event.
Thank you.